Welcome to the From Concealment Podcast, the show for firearm enthusiasts who like to shoot, train, carry, and compete. Get ready for some shooting and sight, firearm and accessory reviews, and of course, insight on concealed carry. And now, broadcasting from behind enemy lines in the From Concealment studio, it's Pete Mitchell and Dan Sams.
Hey, Freedom Nation, this is Pete Mitchell.
And this is Dan Sams.
And you are listening to the From Concealment Podcast.
Yeah, you are.
So, Dan, a lot happening ever since last week. George Floyd was killed, murdered, I might add, by the police, and then protests quickly turning into riots. And so right before we started this podcast, you go, hey, how's it going out there? I'm like, I'll talk about it on the podcast.
Yes. Yeah.
So
man.
Before I get to, it is California, right? And by the way, I was telling my wife before all of this, I go, look, we are a powder keg waiting to happen. Like
we've been saying this for the last 2 months. We've been saying this.
Everyone is, unconstitutionally locked down, deprived of the ability to work. And we're surprised that it literally took just a spark to ignite the country on fire. What do you think is going to happen? No one's got any work. They're not afraid of coming into work today because, they're not going to work. If they're on unemployment, they're making more on unemployment right now. So,
sleep all day, riot all night. That's the way it goes.
I mean, it's like, what did you think was going to happen, you idiot?
I know. Yeah, man. Well, and it's, and notice how fast, obviously there's been stuff building up. But man, this was stuff that happened since the last episode. Stuff, bam, 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 really quickly erupted. And then to every city. You've got Minneapolis, now like every major city. And then the escalation just keeps increasing. I've got interesting intel that I'd love to discuss, but I want to hear what's going on with you first. Yeah.
Well, I'm really curious. I want to hear this first from you if I can. Tell me what it's like in Ohio, because California is California. So it's like everyone knew in California, okay, LA is going to riot. I wasn't sure about San Francisco because they're so paranoid about coronavirus, which, by the way, if we don't have a massive increase in coronavirus sickness, it was exactly like we've been saying, not nearly as bad as they've been claiming.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I still don't understand how churches can be closed. All these others can be closed. You're supposed to be 6 feet away, and everybody's condemning anybody for even going on a walk too near to someone else. And yet people are approving of rioting. Like the same liberals who were mad at, people for saying, well, I need to go to the grocery store a second time this week are apparently upset or are fine with people rioting. So that's crazy.
What it is honestly, because it's a race riot, you can't say anything.
You're not allowed.
Like you can't condemn the protest. The rioting you can condemn, but you can't condemn the protest, which I actually am totally in agreement with. I think I think we should all be protesting.
I'm good with the protesting.
I got literally no problem with that part whatsoever. But then you see what they're doing to these poor businesses that have been screwed over by their states for how many months now? And then all of a sudden, we're just taking everything in there.
Well, yeah, like, first of all, you're not allowed to make money. So we're shutting down your small business. So for months, so some people canceled their insurance because they were running out of money, right? And because they couldn't open their shop anyway. So they don't have any business liability insurance, a lot of them. And then, of course, though, the cops will come and get you if you try to open, but they won't try to stop someone from rioting the place.
Right.
And so you're screwed over.
Well, and in the cops' defense on that, it's not like you can do anything when you got hundreds to thousands of people rioting.
Yes.
That's literally where you just stand there in the line as a cop and go, okay, this is the place where we're not going to let them advance past this, because there's nothing they can do. They are completely outnumbered.
Except for, did you see the footage in Minneapolis of the cop starting the rioting? You haven't seen this yet,
that doesn't really surprise me.
Yeah. So now this does not justify all the other rioting that's going on. All bad. I'm against it all. But remember, some of the first images coming out of Minneapolis was the AutoZone burning.
Oh, you know what? I did see that, but Yeah. Okay. So go ahead, tell everyone the story on that, because the cops denied it was that guy, which of course they would deny.
Of course they're going to. So here's the thing. There's multiple. So somebody gets video of a guy before, as far as I know, before any major rioting had happened. And of course it's hard to follow the chronology, but this was at the AutoZone. The AutoZone was like the first thing that anybody was reporting on burning. And you see this guy go up with what looks kind of like one of those like blackjack things and just start smashing windows. He's in what looks like black fatigues, black military style.
Gas mask.
He's got a NATO gas mask on.
Tactical boots.
Tactical gear, everything. Breaks the windows. And then supposedly, and I'm talking multiple of the Boog pages were reporting that guys followed this guy and he walked back to the police precinct.
Yeah, I heard that.
They get some pictures of this dude's face. I mean, of course, he's got his gas mask on, but then there's a text feed that's supposedly his ex talking to someone else saying, "Oh my gosh, that's him." Like he's a guy. And then the one guy's like, "That's my gas mask," or something. It was like his boots or something.
I remember seeing that. Yeah.
And so like we have the witnesses there that saw him go back to the precinct. We have the woman who claims to be his ex and a mutual friend who said that was him based on the images. And then they've got the two pictures next to each other and you're like, yeah, that sure does look like him. Of course we don't know, but with something like 3 or 4 different witnesses coming out saying like, it sure looks like this cop.
Well, and that was the thing too, when the cops come out and say, well, no, it's not him. I'm like, first of all, you guys have no credibility.
No credibility
whatsoever. No one believes the police for good reason. You lie to protect your own. Period. Yeah. We see it over and over again. Don't tell me, oh, there's good cops. Look, there are no good cops because they all defend the bad cops. That by definition means you're not a good cop. Period.
Yeah. Yeah. Unless you're willing as a police officer to start outing some dudes.
Unless you don't want to be Serpico, which
but remember what
happened to him. Cops shot him.
Well, remember what happened to the dude who all he wanted was for cops to uphold he was a fellow police officer saying, man, we just got to defend obey the oath that we took, and he gets fired. So that tells you pretty much, you're either part of the system or you are doing something to get it fixed, which means you're probably going to get fired. I would say very few exceptions. So, so we've got that situation going on here, man. I'll tell you, here in Ohio, we had I know they were using CS gas I shouldn't say I know. There was reports they were using CS gas in Columbus. I know I had some friends that were protesting in Cleveland. Leroy wasn't there this time, but some friends of Leroy were there. And what was really interesting is they're like, man, these are all white people breaking windows. They're like, all these guys, and I don't think they're from here. And so like there's a pastor friend of mine who was there protesting, and he's yelling at he says, I just got fed up with it. He starts yelling at these dudes. He's like, you are not from here and you're destroying our city. So crazy stuff like that was going on. It was just a mess, but we have not had as bad of stuff in Cleveland as I've heard some other places. We definitely had some rioting, had some cop cars burned, some businesses looted and windows broken. There's also a fun viral image going around of there's an Italian bread shop that some dudes just stood outside with AR-15s, man. That was in Cleveland, and nobody bothered them.
Did you watch the whole video?
I haven't watched that video.
They tried to bother them, and they kept going in. Like the Italian guys kept going inside their doors and closing them, but they had rifles. I don't know what they were because they didn't all look like ARs. They looked like maybe a shotgun. I don't know what.
One of them looked like a shotgun. Yeah,
yeah, and but they, they kept staying outside. They got guns. And they were like, maybe we shouldn't go mess with them.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, man. Here in California, okay. We heard about the rooftop Koreans.
Roof Koreans, man.
Rooftop Koreans from 1992 when we had the Rodney King riots out here in LA. Very, very well documented. The Koreans, the best part is the headbands that they put on.
Yes, they all wore those white headbands.
In 92, right? And they're on their rooftops. They're like, you are not looting our stores with their rifles.
Yeah. And big old grins on their faces, man. They look like the coolest.
And they got left alone, right? Because they had guns.
Yeah.
So the rooftop Koreans made their comeback. Only now, it was funny, I was looking at their pictures. I'm like, now they're all wearing plate carriers with AR-15s.
Yeah,
it was hilarious, man. It was like just an update in time. That's all right, it was. Man. But here's the thing, man. In California, it is illegal to use a firearm to protect your property.
What?
If you cannot shoot someone who is looting your store legally. You will go to jail. Oh, you can only use it to protect yourself from death or great bodily harm for either yourself or you see it's about ready to happen to someone else.
See, this is where I feel like with rioting, though, the line switches up. We've talked about how I don't want to kill someone over property. Right. Even that villain, his life to me is more valuable than my stuff. Right. But when we're talking about rioting, we're talking about like they're burning buildings down. People are in danger. And we're also talking about like not just stealing something of yours, but absolutely taking away your means of provision for your family.
And lighting it on fire. They're doing that all over LA.
So I'm like, man, with rioting, we're not just talking about somebody stealing something. We're talking about someone putting people in danger and stealing complete livelihoods. And now I'm still not saying we should necessarily kill people, but let's just be honest, like the presence of firearms are more likely to de-escalate that situation.
I was thinking about this as I'm watching all these stores get burnt up and looted. And I'm on the side of the protesters in this one, not the side of the rioters, right? Totally on the side of the protesters. And I was thinking about this and I was like, you know what I think I would do if I were in that situation, whether or not I agreed with the protest. Like, let's just say it was something that I didn't agree with.
Yeah.
I don't think I would care. I would take whatever their slogan is and I would put that up in my windows of my business in hopes that they would see that and go, they're one of us. Let's leave that business alone. Not saying it would necessarily work, but I guarantee you if I was in Long Beach or LA with a storefront, I would have Black Lives Matters all over that thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I would hope that is like enough to let them see he's one of us. Let's not go trash his store. Yeah. I don't know that it would work.
Yeah. So let's just talk about the difference between protesters and rioters right now, because it's an important one. So we've got protesters that are totally legitimate. We've got the Boogaloo Boys who are coming out to support the protesters and also to protect businesses and homes, right? And so you've got at least three groups going on in there. And by God's grace, I believe we've seen some Boogaloo Boys hooking up with some of the Black Lives Matter boys, and they're connecting up, and there's friendships. I've been having conversations with guys where I've said, listen, got a whole, I live near Cleveland, man. A lot of my pastor buddies are African-American. And I've said, listen, man, you get in a bad spot, we'll call out the QRF to get you as safe as we can get you. And they're like, yeah, like I've noticed in a lot of these videos, there's a bunch of Southern redneck boys coming out, backing up our protesters. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. I've been telling you this for a long time. Here's what's critical though. I'm following comms for a whole lot of different boog pages. And, man, the continual reports are these guys will be out there with the protesters. A looter will run up and will say, "Hey, you guys getting paid?" There's a Invictus, Virginia. One of the dudes I follow, he's like, somebody came up to me and asked if I was getting paid too, because they were looking to hook up with whatever. We've got multiple reports in multiple cities of pallets of bricks being dropped off in certain areas. So and we keep hearing in Minneapolis and in other places in Cleveland, I'm talking protesters on the ground were like, these dudes are not from here. The rioters seem to be not from the towns where they're looting. And I'm not going to say that's universal, right? But like, we're seeing something go down that is definitely shady. And we're not talking about just some rumor or some conspiracy theory. I'm hearing from eyewitnesses that are like, this guy asked me if I was getting paid because he was getting paid and he was trying to figure out where everybody was supposed to hook up for that. We've got eyewitnesses who are seeing the pallets of brick blocked off, but positive stuff, man, that was happening. I don't know if you saw the video of the Antifa guy, or I'm assuming he's Antifa. He's got a hammer and he's trying to break up bits of pavement. And the protesters tackled him, handled him, took him over and handed him over to the police. It was awesome.
And did you notice, again, a line of cops?
Yeah.
That guy was
standing.
like 6 feet in front of him.
Yeah, he wasn't far.
And
but they're not doing
they had to get him to the cops because the cops were like, we're not breaking the line. We're not leaving our post, basically.
Yeah.
Which I kind of understand. I mean.
Right? Yeah. Well, and here, that was a property destruction issue.
How about the video? Did you see the video where it was clear that the cops were the ones that were beating up their cop car and lighting it on?
No, I didn't see that one.
It was clear it was the cops themselves beating up the cop car.
Oh, my gosh. Does not surprise me a bit.
Well, I think it's kind of odd that why is it that it's always these really old cop cars that seem to be getting lit on fire?
Isn't that something? Yeah.
Kind of curious to me. I mean, we got more modern cop cars than the ones that seem to be getting lit on fire.
Yeah.
Just a little something I'm noticing.
Like, why is this Caprice Classic burning, man?
Dude.
There's no Chargers burning. What have they got? Some kind of asbestos keeping that from happening? I don't know.
That's it.
No. But did you see the video of the dude who, that fellow Boog Patrol brother out there, and he's holding up one of the 40 millimeter rubber bullets that they were shooting people with?
No.
Yeah, dude. This is a video. I think the video showed up at like 11:30 last night. He's like, listen, I was standing with protesters. He's there with some black guys. I don't know if they're Black Guys Matter or whatever, or Black Guns Matter or who it was, but like it was a diverse group. And this guy's like, we were standing with protesters doing nothing wrong, and the police shot us with 40 millimeter rubber bullets. Nobody's rioting, only protesters here. He's like, the cops freaking started this today.
The cops started shooting people on their porches of their homes.
I saw that video too. Was that cops or National Guard? I think that was cops.
I heard originally it was cops.
There was it looked like there was a Humvee rolling.
And then they started saying, well, it's National Guard too. So I don't know if it was cops or National Guard. Yeah. But I mean, the first reports that I heard were from cops.
All right. So I've been sharing that video because people are standing out on their front porch and they're getting shot at for being on their own property. And I'm like, this should never happen.
This was pretty funny to me. The CNN reporter getting arrested live on the air. Did you see that one?
Yeah.
That one was just classic to me because the guy was like, oh, okay, where would you like us to move? And like he was totally calm. And the cops were like, no, we're arresting you. What are you arresting me for? I'm a reporter, and like totally gets hauled off to jail, him and the cameraman. Yeah. And then another one I saw live on the air, I believe it was a woman reporter. I don't know what station she was with. The cops start shooting her and her cameraman with the
paintballs.
The paintballs, yeah.
I saw that one too. When she's like, what the heck's going on? And he kept on, like they're getting out of the way and he kept coming. And I'm like,
the cop was literally like just zeroing in on them. Like, I don't like you guys. I'm taking you out.
That guy's being a fool, man. Like that's, yeah. Oh, it's nuts, man. So some crazy. Well, and did you see last night? Sorry, there's just so much that's happened. Last night, Antifa posted on I guess on their Twitter and Instagram that like they're essentially announcing a crystal knocked, right? Like they're essentially like, let's go burn the white neighborhoods and take what's ours, comrades. And I'm like, you guys are the most cliche commies there were. And so last night I was like, oh Lord, please send a commie to my house that I can shoot. But no, they didn't come.
Well, that was the thing. Okay, so I'm
that was a joke, by the way, for legal purposes. I have no intentions of shooting commies.
My community got warned that we were targeted.
Yeah.
And I'm like, first of all, how many homes do they have to pass up to get to my community? So like everyone in my community is like going crazy. Oh no, they're going to come after us. I mean, they're trying to come after Rossmore. I'm like, dude, are you kidding me? No one cares that much about Rossmore. Yeah. And then they're literally going to drive by every other home. If you don't know where my community is, there's no way you're going to lead 100, 200 people to my community. Yeah. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Not in a million years. And if it did, I'm in the back of the community. You got to make it all the way back there. And if you do, I got all kinds of weapons. And now, now you're invading my home. This is a different ballgame now.
Yeah.
We got castle doctrine on our side. So I'm just saying.
That's right.
That's different if you're looting my store.
We had people freaking out here. And I'm like, I'm not going to say the name of our city. We're not a known town. We're in the Cleveland area. And like, yeah, I'm sure that there are some people mad at people that live here. But like, come on, man, nobody cares. And if they did, like, there's not going to be enough of them. It's just...
Here's the problem, and I think everyone realizes this. You go after empty stores, your threat level down here.
Yeah.
You go after homes, what do they have in the home? Do they have guns in the home?
Yeah.
Like in between where the riots were in Long Beach and my house is maybe 10 miles. I don't even think it's that far. But every home in those bad communities, because around downtown Long Beach is really bad communities, they're all, barred up windows. Every one of those homes has a gun in it. Every single one of them has a gun in it for protection. Like you don't live down there without some sort of weapon. Mm-hmm. It's like no one's going to come and, it's just not going to happen. Like it's not going to happen. They're taking the opportunity to go get free stuff. Like they don't even care that they're literally being filmed on the news. Like it's crazy.
Yeah.
I saw a report of a reporter walking through Target while it was being looted. There's this one lady with a shopping cart, literally just putting stuff in the shopping cart. Like, I'm just taking this stuff. I'm like, they don't care. They don't care.
Did you see the picture of the dude during the looting? Some nerdy white kid's got a thing of Lego. I'm like, I'm against stealing, but I think I got a special kind of thought for that dude who's just stealing Lego at Target.
My dad won't buy me any Legos. I got to take this one.
Oh, man. Yeah. So crazy times. I'm with you. I think actually, if we wanted this to end quickly, let's just send Antifa, just to your nice, suburban town where everybody's packing heat in, middle America.
Never going to happen.
You want this to end quick? Have them do what they said they were going to do. We'll end this real quick. Because let me just tell you, we got a heck of a lot more people with, 4,000 or 5,000 rounds stocked up, and they haven't had the chance to go to the range lately. And you send some commies on their porch to try to break in, like their dudes are going to be like, finally, like, oh
yeah. I got to tell you, man. If people understood that when you train on, as an example, your AR-15, and you got either a red dot or a holographic sight on it of some sort, that thing is so easy to use.
Yeah, man.
Very little recoil, very loud. Hopefully you got some hearing protection on, or you're going to blow out your ears. Mm-hmm. But literally for home defense, I really do like the AR-15.
Yeah.
I would like it even better if we could have AR pistols here in California, because that's easier to get around corners and things like that, because you don't have this, long barrel on it. But I mean, probably the biggest problem I would say with an AR-15 for home defense is, for the most part, like it's going through a couple of interior walls, no problem.
Yeah.
Like we just got drywall, right? I mean, there's nothing here. Yeah. So, I mean, you really got to know, what are you aiming at? What is beyond that if you have to fire your firearm? Because you got to take all that stuff in consideration. I got kids, right? So for me, it's like you don't go firing a gun inside the house until okay, I know I'm going to hit that guy and no one else. And it's not going to go, if it does go through him, it's, going right into a wall or, something solid. I don't need to worry about it, hitting one of my kids, because that's a real consideration that you got to have. And hopefully you've thought that stuff through before, because in the heat of the moment, the adrenaline dump,
it's fast.
You're just going on reaction. And you've hopefully thought through that stuff. I mean, you've talked many times about using this quarantine as an opportunity to practice clearing your house. Things like that. So if you're watching us on Facebook and you're like, what's clearing the house mean? It means going through the home with your firearm. And okay, if someone's inside the house, how do you clear it? How do you get them out, or make sure that they're not going to get to your family? And so all that kind of stuff you got to take into consideration.
So I've been recommending Tactical Advantage. I don't know if we can see it as well on here, but great book by Gabriel Suarez. And man, it actually goes into how do you clear your own home?
Nice.
How do you prepare for that? And especially as you're talking about when you're thinking about if you're carrying an AR or really anything you're carrying, there's a lot of stuff that has the potential to go through drywall. Even some smaller calibers, so you've got to pay real attention to what you're carrying and the direction which you're shooting and what's behind it. I always like the idea, if I'm shooting downward, my AR is always going to be going in the ground, and that's good. And so I have the benefit everybody's bedrooms are upstairs. If somebody was breaking in, hopefully I would be able to meet them downstairs, and I could be shooting on a level playing field and not too worried. I don't have anybody real close. There's not a house like right there. And so if I'm on that level, I should be pretty safe because it's not like I have a next door neighbor,
Right.
Yeah. So crazy stuff. So recommending do some training. Other thing is, as unlikely as it is for you to be having trouble with Antifa at your own residence, you might be having some other trouble. And so great thing. I know I've been last week, I think, or maybe a couple of weeks ago, we talked about QRFs. That was a great time to be talking up to your buddies. Say, if something's happening. And
explain to everyone what a QRF is if they're new listening to the podcast.
If you're new to the show, QRF stands for Quick Response Force. And the idea of a quick response force from a civilian perspective is that you have guys that you're going to be able to call, a network of brothers, that if something goes down, they're going to get there quick. And so let's just use the rioting as an example. Let's say that one of your buddies lives near where the rioting's been happening, and we get word, we're following intel on Twitter and on whatever, and we get word they're planning to come down his street, and he's going to be in danger. Maybe he's living really close to downtown or whatever. So he says, man, I just need dudes here, man. Like my family's in danger. So we get there just as quickly as we can. So it's like the modern Minuteman, right? You've got showing up in kit with cameras, right? Cameras on your phone, whatever. You're ready to go. So you're standing out there with your weapons just to discourage anything from happening, and also to film, so you're documenting in case anybody's doing something illegal. You've got documentation of it, right? But those QRFs are working. We're getting lots of reports during the lockdown of just people getting somewhere because the cops wouldn't get there, or in some cases because the cops were the problem, and we just discouraged anything from happening because you had enough guys right there in full kit, with gear, armed and ready, and it led to peace. And this is the thing I'm pushing for. Like, the whole point of this is we de-escalate with the presence of firearms. The point is not to start big fights and shoot people. This is not what we're going for here. We're going for peace. And we're continuing to see in the riots and everywhere else, armed people tend to not get hurt, and it tends to de-escalate situations. You look at the cops keep not bothering the guys who show up with their ARs. It's a good thing. So plan for that. Maybe you get together 5 or 6 guys and you're the local QRF. I could recommend, if you start following Task Force Duncan on Instagram, they've got a Discord feed you can jump on, and you get regular comms about what's going on here and there. Worth doing. Not that I would do that, but I've heard Leroy's doing it. What's happening, where the heat is, and where you need to get out of, or where maybe somebody needs some support. But if you got a QRF, you've got a team that can show up and respond and protect some people and some property.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and again, I do think it kind of depends on what state you're in, because QRFs here in California, there's no open carry. So you just got to have a bunch of people show up and hope that that's enough to dissuade. It's not going to be, because it's not the same as if you had AR strapped over your shoulder and everyone can see it.
Yeah.
You tend to get left alone.
Man, think about that. Crime rates go up when we can't open carry. Open carry is a good thing.
Dude, I don't know if you know this. They changed the laws here in California where you don't get arrested now for basically theft under $910. So you could literally, and we're seeing this, you can literally break into a store in the middle of the day, take a bunch of stuff. As long as you're not over $900, you're okay. The cops aren't even going to come for that.
Nobody even cares.
So now we're seeing groups of people break into stores and do that, because if they're all under 900, they're good. And then, of course, here in California, they passed a law recently where we have no bail for a great many of our crimes. And I have mixed opinions on bail anyway. I think a lot of bail is just going after poor people and making sure that they can't get out of jail. I'm not for that. The Constitution actually has a rule that you're not allowed to put bail on someone that they can't afford. So, I mean, you know, and we routinely violate that. That's just kind of like, well, let's forget about that. You know, we're going to say that this crime's a $10,000 bail, and you know that person doesn't have the $1,000 bond to get out of that, to be able to bond out. But so they're seeing all kinds of people who literally get released like that same day and then get rearrested the same day, because this is what they do, right? They just break the law. That's the way they live their life. So, I mean, California is pretty much the social experiment for what not to do.
That is true.
We're a great shining beacon to the rest of the nation of what not to do.
Oh, man. That so sucks.
But they're so proud here. They're so proud. They're like, yes, we're progressive. We're the greatest. No, we're stupid. We're idiots.
And they're on the verge of bankruptcy, and people are leaving the state for freer states fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was talking with someone last week in Dallas, and I was telling them, I'm looking at Dallas, and she goes, yeah, you and everybody else. And I'm like, yep, because we all want out of California. It's crazy here. It's insane.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, man. Oh, man. Oh, there's so much going on, man. So can I make a couple of recommendations then?
Please.
Because I've got a lot of calls and emails and everything else asking for recommendations on AR-15s right now. All of a sudden, people who weren't paying attention when we were talking, I don't know, over the last year or two about AR-15s, now they want to know about AR-15s. People who never thought that they wanted one, thought that you shouldn't have one, all of a sudden they want them. And I'm like, can I just get you to say, Dan, you were right all along? I haven't tried that yet, but I just might, because at some point I'm going to be like, it's the moral of the story is listen to Dan. So I just want to encourage people, when we start talking about building an AR, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but you guys know we've talked about 80% lowers. You can get an 80% lower, and you can legally have a gun, except in some states. Sorry, Pete. You can legally have a gun that is not traceable. Praise the Lord for it. It's wonderful. And you can build with basically parts that you got online, or you can come to Lake Erie Arms where we can hook you up. The other thing I would always say is a lot of people like these Anderson and Palomento lowers. I don't recommend those. They're probably fine. I've heard some stories about crazy things happening. You can do just a notch up above that, get yourself an Aero Precision lower and upper, and do your build out from that. And for really cheap, you can have a really quality gun. Now, obviously, you can go up from there, but I'm just going to take a little moment, recommend some Aero Precision. Here's the thing. You don't have to do a build to do a great gun. So if you want to, get yourself the nice Smith & Wesson M&P, get you $500. It's going to work. It's going to be a good gun. It's not going to be fancy, but it's going to make for a really handy fighting weapon. You put yourself a nice little red dot or whatever on there, and you're good to go. So if you're thinking about buying something, you don't have to get fancy, but you probably better spend at least $500. If you want to get fancy, you can spend about $1,200 and you can make something really nice. Just keeping it all in mind there, guys. If you're thinking about buying an AR, you should buy one. Like, this is the time to get an AR.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've got a few different ARs. Literally, the very first firearm I bought was an AR.
Nice.
It was right after the Texas shooting. I don't know when that was. Maybe 2017 or 18, something like that.
Yep.
The one where the guy went into the church and shot like 21 people, and an NRA instructor who was living across the street saw what was going on, and he was the guy who stopped him. It was that one, right? And I was like, yeah, man, people should. I'm like, wait a second. I make all kinds of money. Why don't I have an AR? So I literally went to the local gun store, bought the AR, and I remember thinking, okay, now I got to tell my wife I just bought a gun. So I think I was like talking to her. I'm like, yeah, so I just bought a gun. I got to pick it up in 10 days. She's like, oh, okay. And I didn't tell her, what kind of gun I bought, right? I'm like, I just bought a gun, right?
You just kept it general.
Yeah, I got to pick it up in 10 days. So literally 10 days, right? Because they time everything in California. It's down to the second as to when you can pick it up. So right after that, I walk into the store. Excuse my doors. Somebody's ringing the doorbell.
At least it's not a no-knock raid.
We all know that I'm home, clearly, right?
Yeah.
Quarantine is happening. So I pick it up. I come back home, and I'm like, hey, hun, here's the gun I bought, right? This big old AR-15. Just pulling it right out. She's like, you got a big gun. I'm like, that's what I got, right? And then it was like just downhill from there. It was like, oh, I want this, I want this, I want this. And at the time, and I don't know if they've changed the law, I think they did. At the time, you could only buy one handgun every 30 days.
So you were getting one, like, mark the calendar?
Every 30 days. Like,
that's awesome.
And if you did it before, then you had a penalty. You had to wait like 35 more days to buy it again. Like, it was one of those situations, right? So I literally, every 30 days, the only thing that was the exception to that at the time, again, I don't know if they've changed it, was any private party transfer. So like the whole gun show loophole, there is no gun show loophole in California. Right. Not that that's ever a loophole. That's
not really been a loop, but yes, I feel you.
Yeah, like you could go to your neighbor and he could sell you one of his guns and you just give him money and you just take the gun.
Yeah.
Done transaction. California, you can't do that. You sell a firearm, it has to go to an FFL. So you walk into your FFL, say I'm doing a PPT, private party transfer. They fill out the paperwork. They take the firearm. They hold it for 10 days. You pay the $25 DOJ background check. Then you can come pick it up. Like $25, and then I think it's $10 to do the PPT. So that's just so the state of California knows who has what. That's literally what it is. They track everything.
That sucks.
Yeah.
I hate it.
But I've got a couple of ARs that started out as 80%ers. And then when they changed the law, I was like, look, I'm not registering my 80%ers. I'm just going to go buy a couple of lowers and get rid of the 80% lowers that I'd made. So I did that. And I bought Anderson lowers because I was like, what do I care? It's just a lower. Work. I mean, they're metal, right? Yeah. They're not the plastic ones. I mean, I'm like, who gives a rip? And I still, to this day, don't care. I know, like in the gun world, that's a big deal. Everyone's like, oh, no, you got to have, I mean, no one wants an Anderson. I'm like, dude, who cares? It's a lower. There's like 3 companies in the entire nation that make lowers, and everyone else just stamps their emblem on it.
Exactly right.
And you're like, oh, it's so different. It's not different.
The only thing bad I've ever heard about an Anderson, and here's the thing, people can mess stuff up in how they put them together. And so it's not all, and when it comes to the lowers, I like Arrow a lot. So I'm going to say you can probably do a little bit better with something like an Arrow. But like you say, it's just a piece of steel. I probably wouldn't do the composite, although it'd still probably work. But if you got a steel, it's probably going to be fine. Yeah. I have heard of some of the lower quality companies that they didn't have everything to spec for their uppers, but never heard anything bad about a lower. And so you probably got nothing to worry about. And if you're buying, let's say, I don't know if it was Anderson that did this, but if you had an Anderson lower and upper, they're probably going to work just fine. Like, people just need to chill. Yeah. So I'm with you. I like my arrows, but I'm not going to go saying that like you're making a terrible decision buying.
Plus to me, I was like, they were 80%ers before. What do I care? They were never a brand name on it. Like, I don't care at all. And and one of them's a 300 Blackout. Man, I tell you, I love that.
That's a fun gun right there.
That's a real fun gun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I like that as a round. I think it's a fun round.
Yeah, it's really expensive though. That's the downside. Really expensive.
Well, you can just get your poor man's 300 Blackout is a it's an AK-47 round. You just get your 7.62 by 39.
Can you put that in there?
No, I'm saying that
I was like, what?
No, you can't. No, let me clarify that. I'm saying that like if you don't want to spend the money to shoot a 300 Blackout, but you want a round that is a bigger
you want
round,
a 30 caliber. Yeah.
Go with your AK-47, get your 7.62 at 39. Yes, no, please don't put 7.62
I was like,
ammo
what?
in a 300 Blackout. Oh yeah, that's the last thing we want is for somebody.
That would be a mistake, a big mistake.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, I've got a. How should I put this? In fact, I'm not going to put it anyway. I'll circle back to it another time and weed it in the conversation the way that I want to. So I'm not putting out there publicly something I don't want to put out there publicly. But
party on, man. I feel you.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. I live in California. I got to be careful what I say.
Yeah, man. Same here, man. That's why I don't really.
By the way, DOJ, California DOJ, I don't do anything illegal. Everything I do is above board. Period. Because I don't want to get arrested. In California, man, they will just throw away the key. You're in jail forever. Like I was telling someone, I was like, part of the reason why I don't go to the protests, even though I'm totally with the protesters, is I believe it's illegal to conceal carry at a protest in California. And I'm like, dude, I really don't want to be in these areas when it goes down and not have a firearm on me. So I'm like, I'm going to, I'm with you in spirit, but I'm not going to go walk it because it's getting crazy out there. What was really funny is, Huntington Beach, really nice area, obviously Huntington Beach, right next to Newport Beach here in California. So everyone put out the word, hey, we're protesting on at Huntington Beach, which basically means Main Street. Main Street is where everyone's going to protest. So the protest starts, huge people, huge crowd. And I was telling my wife, I'm like, dude, that's Huntington Beach. Like, okay, yeah, you're going to have people coming in from all the other cities, but it's not like it's a massive minority area anyway. But in this particular protest, there's a lot of white people who are protesting too, because so many white people are like, dude, this was totally wrong. Mm-hmm. And so then it turned to looting and rioting. Main Street, right? All of the native Huntington Beach people were standing there pushing all of the looters back, waiting until the cops showed up. When the cops showed up, I kid you not, they start yelling, USA, USA, because they were like, dude, we're not going to loot Main Street and Huntington Beach.
Yeah.
A bunch of MMA guys, Chuck Liddell was out there. They were all out there like basically telling people, you're not looting Huntington Beach.
That's awesome.
We're with you in the protest. You don't get to loot Huntington Beach. I was like, dude, this is hilarious. That's Huntington Beach for you.
That's what I'm talking about, man. I like it.
Protest? Absolutely. Loot? No, not at all.
So I think this is awesome. We're seeing some cool exercise of good human dignity in some of this. So there's some awful stuff happening. We're seeing, like, some of the videos have been really disturbing of people getting hurt and just abusing elderly and women and children. Like, it's just awful. And I'm seeing cops do that and rioters do that. It's terrible. But we've also seen people helping each other out, a lot of cool stuff, things like you were saying there in Huntington Beach. I think it's awesome. Yeah. So, hey, real quick, I got to give a shout out. We had a listener who tracked us down because he was trying to find the Facebook page. He couldn't find the From Concealment Facebook page. So, I mean, he could be a Fed. But this dude reached out to me, was trying to catch up, and just was because he really wanted to find our Facebook page so we can watch online. So in the sake of keeping everybody careful and not in trouble in case you get labeled a terrorist by following our page, I'm just going to say shout out to KE. Thanks, dude, for listening in. Thanks for going to the effort. And please don't be a Fed because we're being nice to you. Not that we're doing anything illegal, but I don't know if you heard about this. They've labeled Antifa a terrorist organization, right? Which is probably appropriate, except for that they're not technically an organization like we think of them. And I've also noticed instead of calling them Antifa, they've been calling them anarchists, right? And you guys, I don't know if you've seen this in a lot of the language. Well, that gets tricky because there are anarchists that are non-violent that just say, hey, I would just like to not have a federal government. I'd like it to be run at the state level or whatever. And they're peaceful and they're whatever. Now the language is blurring in a lot of these things. And I'm concerned on how they're going to start labeling people domestic terrorists. I have seen some documentation that I wasn't necessarily supposed to see that's using real loose language for what constitutes a domestic terrorist. And it can be as loose as, you don't believe everything that they're saying about COVID-19.
Yeah.
And so I'm just telling everybody, like, I'm trying to be careful about language. Obviously, our names are out there, so we're screwed no matter what. But, or hopefully not. But, yeah, trying to be careful. They're getting real loose with what they're calling a domestic terrorist. And we recognize they're getting real loose with who they're shooting bullets at. And so be safe out there. Recognize who the real enemy is. So, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
Anyway.
Why don't you give Lake Erie their plug?
Yeah, Lake Erie Arms. Want to say thank you guys for all you do to help us out. And we already mentioned about a build. You got to get out to Lake Erie Arms and do your build. Even if you're not from Ohio, you can buy parts from there. So way to go. That's awesome. So come on out to Lake Erie Arms or check us out at learms.net. We'd love to have you in the store here on Ohio. We'll talk to you soon.
Cool. All right, guys. We'll be back next week with another episode. We'll talk to you then. Take care, everybody.
Take care.
You've been listening to the From Concealment Podcast with Pete Mitchell and Dan Sams. Be sure to tune in next week for more gun talk. Also, check out the From Concealment website for more shooting-related goodness at FromConcealment.com.